The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, a couple of items to get to tonight. I told you I would be back on Monday. Hope your weekend was fantastic. Temperatures are warming up a little bit on the East Coast. Still frigid temperatures, but I think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Kids are going back to school tomorrow for the first time in over a week. So we're getting back to some level of normalcy. We'll see how long this lasts. They've threatened us with the white at least 2 or 3 times. They're talking about it snowing a little bit tonight. I don't think any of that's going to take place. They're talking about snowing tomorrow, talking about snowing potentially Wednesday. Get out of here with that. But I don't think we're done with the white. But I do think we're done for now. We'll see what happens. But in any event, a couple of commander-related topics that I wanted to get to tonight. So let's dive right into the proceedings this evening and start with something interesting from the team. So me and Rio, just to give you a little bit, matter of fact, let me start by giving you some background information on this. Matter of fact, let me just show you the picture. So Rio and myself have been having conversations about the direction of this team and certain aspects of this team, if you will. So as you can see here, the Commanders are going to probably start doing this every Monday. Mock Draft Monday is here. So they're going to take the mock draft of, a Daniel Jeremiah, whomever is the talking head who has the latest mock draft out, posted on their channel for clicks and engagement, just to stay relevant. There's really nothing going on with the team right now per se. But again, we expect some press conferences here over the next week or two. Somebody had said to me that John Keim, because I haven't checked out John Keim's podcast here in a bit. As you know, I've had a lot of stuff going on. But he said that they may wait until all of the roster moves, or excuse me, all of the coaching staff moves have been made. The deck has been reshuffled, and they've made their hires before they have the presentation or press conference for the offense. Because still, we haven't heard from David Blau either, right? And granted, he's inside the building, et cetera, et cetera. He's still the new offensive coordinator. We would love to hear from him. So I'm assuming we're going to get both of those press conferences, maybe simultaneously. Maybe they'll stagger them. We'll find out. But in any event, shout out to the person that told me that John Keim said that, because I'm wondering, and I even alluded to you guys last week, that at some point we expect a press conference. So maybe that'll be coming this week. Maybe it'll be coming next week. Maybe they want to steer clear of the Super Bowl. I don't think they are that cognizant and care that much. I think really the holdup was the Senior Bowl. Personally, now that they're back from Mobile, hopefully we'll get some press conferences and some things going with the team. But nonetheless, you look at this post and what do you see? You see them talking about Sonny Styles. That's the pick at 7. We talked about this already. Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. We talked about all of this previously. I think we talked about it here. I think we talked about it on the Commanders Kings stream last week. You see his PFF grade, all that good stuff. Great. Awesome. That is not what caught my attention, and that is not what caught Dula Vision's attention. Shout out to my guy Dula, fantastic photographer who is on top of it, right? Shout out to Dula. He noticed the imagery here with the Commanders logo, and normally they only switch up the logo. They only add to it when we were doing throwbacks or something like that. They would switch up the font. They would switch up the way that it was presented. We're now in the offseason. There's no reason to do anything to the logo unless you're looking to do something to the logo. And Rio and myself have been having this conversation, this ongoing conversation. Rio is really big into this. I personally don't give a shit. Honestly, I am interested though. I am intrigued as to what's going to take place, but not to the point that I'm losing any sleep over it or, you know, obsessing over it in any way, shape, or form. But we are getting some new uniforms. That is absolutely happening this year. And I don't know if we've talked about it here on this channel enough, but I do feel like we need to talk about it more, because while I'm not really big into changing the aesthetics of the logo or bringing this back or doing this, I don't really get into those conversations. Once they took Redskins from us, my whole enthusiasm for any of that shit died right there on the operating table. But I do care how we look. Right. I do care as a fan. I do want us to look crispy. I do want us to come out looking clean. And they're going to tinker with some things this offseason. The prevailing thought is that they slow rolled the white championship uniforms in a throwback capacity to introduce them back into the mainstream's consciousness, to inject it into our bloodstreams, because it's going to be our normal home uniform. That is the thought process behind it. Now, is that going to be the case? Don't know. But what we've also heard is that these arrows that you see, we've seen a lot of imagery with these arrows, with the spear, right? We've, you know, talked about this a lot. Even when you go back to last year's videos that they did at the home games to hype up the crowd. If you remember the photo day that they did the photo shoot that they do every year. And they did all of the photo shoots at once. They always do, right? Remember, Terry was noticeably absent from those photo shoots because he was in a contract dispute at the time. So we didn't get him on any of the championship white throwback, you know, imagery where they were standing up in the you know, throwback background with the TVs and all that shit, looking sweet as hell, looking crispy and cold as F. Terry wasn't in any of those. They also did a slew of these videos, kind of like this Roman theme, where they're sitting in these darkly lit, like Roman Empire themed, you know, setups and buildings, and they've got the spears, and they're doing all this fake yelling and all of this shit. But the imagery was really fixated on the spear, right? And so Rio and I got to talking about it and how it feels like they're trying to slow roll the whole spear and, you know, that kind of thing, and roll that out slowly but surely. And I think this is another attempt at a slow rollout, right? Like, we're giving you bits and pieces of what's to come. And so I don't think this is on accident, right? They didn't just accidentally slip this in here with their mock draft artwork, right? They're, I think, transitioning slowly but surely to new uniforms, possibly a new helmet. And Rio's concern is, well, what happens to the black uniforms? Are you getting rid of them? We need black uniforms. He wants a total reboot, does Rio. He's not going to get it, and he knows it, but that doesn't stop him from asking for it. And I'm not going to rain on his parade, but we already know what they want to do. You know, when one of the first things that Josh Harris said when he got here was he wanted to kind of marry the past with the things that they're going to do in the future. And one of the things that they really felt was necessary was the uniforms. And so we saw that. We saw them bring that back this past year. I think they're going to go back to that. What do the burgundies look like? Is there an alternate uniform? Do you have a black uniform? These are all questions that we have. What does all of this mean moving forward? We'll find out. But I do believe this is a part of a rollout that they're doing, and they're kind of testing the waters, seeing how it goes. We'll see. I expect some sort of announcement maybe in April as we approach the draft, where they start teasing new uniforms, that sort of thing. Sometimes teams just spring it on you like, hey, new uniform announcement, and they'll give you like a little video of a shadow where you see a little bit, but not too much. You really don't get to see anything. And it'll say like 5/2/26, and that'll be when they drop the full video. But we're getting new uniforms, just so we're clear. And again, the championship whites are probably going to be the white home standards. But what are the rest of the looks for this team moving forward? Time will tell. Just know that is coming at some point, and I think the spear has something to do with it, but I digress. Shout out to Dula for picking up on what they are putting down. Stay vigilant. Keep your eyes peeled. We'll be monitoring this situation very, very closely. So the main thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight, I'm not going to keep you here very long, and I apologize for the tardiness of this video. This should have been out. I should have been here with you over an hour ago, but you know how that goes. Is taking a look at some of these defensive free agents, the big ones. I think the guys that are going to command some pretty sizable money on the open market. Now, there are a bunch of names that have been left off the list, just like we talked about with the offensive list. This is not everyone, right? I just pulled a few names of guys that I think are going to cash in this offseason, that are going to make some really good money. And as a matter of fact, a few of the names aren't here. I'll just I'll throw those names up here as well. Throw those names up here as we go along. Left out a whole position. Anyhow, we're going to take a look at some of these names, talk about will the Commanders pay one of these guys like we did on the offensive side of the football. There are a bunch of names that I think fit what this team ultimately is looking to do in free agency, similar to the offensive side, where there were some names left off that were some pretty notable free agents. I think as you get to obviously edge rushers, you got Kwity Paye, you got Adafi Owe, who the Chargers traded for. I don't think they're going to let him walk after he ended up with 10.5 sacks this season, but you just never know. But Adafi Owe, Kwity Paye, just a couple of names as edge rushers that may intrigue some teams. Boye Mafe is another name. I've talked to you guys about the edge rusher from Green Bay, Enigbare, right? So there's a number of guys that, fit the bill. Defensive line, like a perfect defensive lineman for the Commanders this offseason would be John Franklin Myers from Denver, who had, I think, 7.5 sacks. Remember, the Broncos were the only team in the league to have like 4 or 5 guys with 7 sacks or more. John Franklin Myers was one of those guys. He'd be perfect for this defense that I've talked to you about, last week, when it comes to what Durante Jones may be looking to implement with that 3-4 base. John Franklin Myers would be perfect to play one of those defensive end spots in that defense. It was a very similar look. Remember, they played a similar base in Denver with Vance Joseph, who is someone that Durante Jones also learned a lot from and was an understudy of. So John Franklin Myers would be a great fit here. But again, not on this list because he's not one of the biggest free agents defensively, but I do think he is going to get paid some good money for what he is able to provide. But let's just run through this list quickly, and we'll talk about these guys and whether or not they'll end up being here or what their fit will be. I'm big on age right now. That's something that because of what we just went through last year, and really even before last year, I was always big on age. But after last year's debacle with all of the older players, I do think there's an emphasis, at least from us as fans, to not wanting to go through that again. Trey Hendrickson, obviously the age jumps off the page at you. He's 31 years old, but can he still produce at the level that we've seen him produce at now? The thing that makes his situation really complicated and tricky is he's coming off of his injury-riddled season where he did not have any production whatsoever. But if you remove that from the equation, you've got 2 back-to-back 17.5 sack seasons. It's hard to remove last year from the equation because he's getting older. And so is that injury that he suffered last year a sign of things to come as he continues to get older and Father Time starts to tap him on the shoulder? Or was last year him actually preserving himself, not putting wear and tear on his 30-year-old body, and now he can come back in his age 31 season and wreak havoc and play really well for some team that's willing to pay him the kind of money he desires. We'll see. I don't think he's going to be here in Washington. And if I'm Trey Hendrickson, maybe you just want to be paid. It's not like Cincinnati was out here winning anything anyway. But at the same time, if I'm going to leave Cincinnati, the place I call home, the place my wife calls home, and he made it abundantly clear that he wanted to stay in Cincinnati, but they clearly don't want him. Don't you want to go chase a chip? Don't you want to be in a position where you can both get paid and have a chance to win? I don't think that's what this destination looks like to people on the outside looking in, like it was last offseason where people felt like this team was a piece or two away. That's not what the outward perception of this team is now. So if I'm a Trey Hendrickson, does Washington make sense for me? And if I'm the Commanders and I just had an offseason full of a bunch of aging veterans, does a 31-year-old Trey Hendrickson make sense to us? These are all questions that I think are really important that have to be answered, which is why I don't think Trey Hendrickson ends up here, but you just never know. Doesn't feel like he's long for Washington, though. Jalen Phillips, I've had this conversation numerous times with Commanders fans. They seem to be very fixated on Jalen Phillips. Good young player, has had some injury concerns. Eagles traded a 3rd-round pick for him. I just have a hard time believing that the Eagles, who really liked what Phillips did for them after the trade, is going to just allow him to walk away. They're going to keep him. Whether they have to franchise tag him to work out a deal or not remains to be seen. But I just don't see Howie Roseman allowing Jalen Phillips to depart. And thus, I don't think he will be available. Should he become available? I actually think he's an intriguing guy. I'm not a massive Jalen Phillips fan. Again, I think we have guys on our roster that are very similar in what they can provide. I think he is a little bit better of a pass rusher than anyone we have on our roster, but it's, again, the difference isn't as significant, not enough to pay him what he may garner on the free agent market. I'll pass on him. I think a cheaper option, if you're looking for a guy to come off the edge similar to Jalen Phillips, is K'Lavon Chaisson. Had a breakout year with the Patriots this year, and the beauty is you get to see him again once more in the Super Bowl. And sometimes the Super Bowl can be a gift and a curse, because if he goes out and he has a sack and a half, 2 sacks in the Super Bowl, similar to another New England Patriot that ended up, signing with them in the offseason last year after winning the Super Bowl with the Eagles on their defensive line, the defensive tackle that they got from Philadelphia, he went out, balled in the Super Bowl, and it sent his value through the roof. Josh Sweat thought he should have been Super Bowl MVP, sent his value through the roof. Those guys cashed in, and they both had really good seasons with their new respective teams. but it did ultimately send their value through the roof. Kayvon Chason has kind of been under the radar this year. He goes out, has a sack or two in the Super Bowl. That's going to, I think, boost his stock. This is a former first-round pick who's finally figured it out. And I think sometimes I've always had this conversation with one of my buddies about, especially in the NBA, it's not about the player, it's about when you get the player, right? Sometimes you get a first-round pick and he just doesn't pan out. I mean, think about it from this perspective. If you're a Washington Wizards fan, Denny Avdia, when you drafted him, you never could even imagine he'd ever be an NBA All-Star, let alone a superstar. Like, he's not a superstar, but he's morphed into a star this year. It's not about Denny Avdia, it's about when you got Denny Avdia. Was he ready to show the reason why he was a first-round pick? He wasn't ready when he was in Washington. He's now ready in Portland. Kayvon Chason wasn't ready when he was drafted in the first round by the Jacksonville Jaguars. He wasn't ready maybe last year as he started to figure some things out, but he is damn sure ready now after posting a double-digit sack season this year with the Patriots. I think the Patriots are going to keep him personally, but you can't keep everybody. They spent a bunch of money last offseason. Can't pay everybody. He could slip through the cracks. He's young, 26 years old, be 27 by the time next year starts, but that's right in the wheelhouse of hitting the prime of your NFL career. He'd be a hell of a target for the Commanders to go and acquire if they can go, if they're looking to get someone that will cost, but you want to break the bank for it necessarily. But again, a big-time performance in the Super Bowl could change everything there. Devin Lloyd at the linebacker position is a name that a lot of Commanders fans have gravitated towards because of the amount of turnovers he was able to produce by himself this year. He was an interception magnet for the Jacksonville Jaguars and a guy that is really good in coverage. I am not the biggest Devin Lloyd fan, and maybe similar to Kayvon Chason, he's figured it out. Former second-round pick, Devin Lloyd was out of Utah, not the fastest guy in the world. Was okay for Jacksonville, but to the point where Jacksonville, matter of fact, he was a former first-round pick, if I'm not mistaken, because Jacksonville declined his fifth-year option, right? So you don't get a fifth-year option if you're a second-round pick. So he's a former first-round pick. And Jacksonville's like, yeah, we're good on the fifth-year option. He goes out, he balls. Now we'll see what happens with him. I think you can find, better football players, but, I'm always big on athleticism, especially at linebacker, and I always lean towards the athlete. Maybe that's the mistake that I'm making at linebacker. Maybe I don't need to lean towards necessarily the best athlete, but the guy that's the smartest, the guy that always finds himself around the football making plays. And that's Devin Lloyd. He won't test well. He won't be the guy that's going to wow you with his numbers, which is, I could have sworn he was like a second or a third round pick. Let me look him up. Because I don't feel like Devin Lloyd was a first round pick, but I feel like he was a second round pick. But I feel like Jacksonville also declined his fifth-year option, but I could be tripping. No, he was a first round pick. He was a first round pick in 2022 NFL. What number was he drafted? He was the 27th. He was pretty late in the first round. That's why I kind of felt like a second rounder. But he's first round pick. They declined his fifth-year option. And hence we are having this conversation. They declined his fifth-year option because they weren't happy with him the first 3 years of his NFL career. So maybe the light bulb came on, or maybe he just had an out-of-body experience. Either way, I think I'm good on Devin Lloyd. Let somebody else overpay for him, and then if he balls, damn, got that one wrong. But I'd rather be safe than sorry on this one. Devin Bush is really interesting as we talk about two Devins. It always seems like Devin Bush can never have the spotlight for himself as a Devin. He's always got to share the Devin spotlight with someone else. When he was coming out, it was him and Devin White. White was the first of the two Devins drafted that year. Now we're talking about Devin Lloyd and Devin Bush in free agency. So he can never have the Devin spotlight to himself. But here's another guy that may have figured it out after a little bit of time. And I just reference, it's not who you draft, it's when you draft that player, right? Or when you get him, rather. Devin Bush came in the league extremely young, as you can see, 6 years of service in the league, going on 7. So he was pretty young when he came out of Michigan, maybe even a little immature, didn't get it done in Pittsburgh, moved on, spent time in Seattle, among other places, and then had a career year this past year with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, this is a guy that played over 80% of the snaps. This is a guy that had over 120 tackles. This is a guy that had 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, and 2 of those 3 interceptions went to the crib. So when I tell you he filled up the stat sheet and did everything for this Cleveland Browns defense, and it always helps when you're alongside a playmaking, destructive rookie linebacker that takes a lot of the attention, that allows you to roam and be, the best version of yourself. That is not what you're going to have here, but doesn't take away from the fact that Devin Bush was a former top 10 pick in the NFL draft, and maybe that top 10 talent has finally flourished. He's finally figured it out. The game has slowed down for him, and now he's playing like the top 10 pick that people thought he was going to be all along. Don't know if that's the case or not, but he will be available. He will be someone that I think teams will look. And again, linebackers usually don't get broken off in free agency, so I don't expect huge money to be poured out to these linebackers, but somebody might get broken off, right? Maybe Bush, maybe Lloyd, could be Quay Walker. Now, Quay is an interesting guy. He's not for everyone, but this type of athleticism doesn't grow on trees, man. And rarely does this type of athleticism get to free agency. These guys with this kind of athletic profile usually don't hit the streets. And maybe Green Bay doesn't allow him to hit the streets, but I'm thinking that's why they drafted the linebacker Edgerrin Cooper to take Quay Walker's place, so they didn't have to pay Quay Walker, and that they didn't necessarily love Quay Walker until this past year, right? Another guy that was a former first-round pick. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option because they were disappointed. A little bit of a head case on the field. He's been tossed out of multiple NFL games. He's picked up senseless personal foul penalties and unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. He can be a little bit of a freelancer, but boy, this year he's come into his own, and maybe it's because Edgerrin Cooper is by his side. Similar to what I said about Devin Bush. When you're playing with an animal next to you, that teams have to account for, it allows you to free up and do some of the things that you probably thought you could be doing on your own, but maybe you just needed a tag team partner. Whatever the case may be, Quay Walker was unlocked this season, but Green Bay may have no intentions of paying him. If you don't want him, I'll take him. But does Adam Peters feel the same way? 25-year-old, he was 26 years old, going into the prime of his career. We could use a former Georgia Bulldog with an athletic profile like Quay Walker. You put him on our defense, and he automatically becomes the best athlete on our defense as a whole. All 3 levels. Kobe Bryant, safety from the Seattle Seahawks. As you can see, I think he was a former, I want to say 2nd-round pick. Let's see where Kobe Bryant. I think he was out of Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see where he was drafted. He was a 4th-round pick out of Cincinnati. So I got the wrong Kobe Bryant. I think there was another Kobe Bryant that went to Kansas. Man, is he good. Kobe Bryant is really, really good. And he's smart. He feels like the kind of guy that could fill that free safety role that we talked about in this defense. Smart, rangy, make plays on the football. And he just came, assuming that he gets out of Seattle. We don't know if he's going to be allowed to leave. And this is another guy that we'll get to see on Sunday in the Super Bowl. And we know how the Super Bowl can change lives. You know, I've watched guys become Super Bowl MVPs and get big contracts. So we'll see what happens with Kobe Bryant. But that Mike Macdonald defense is a pretty complicated one that requires the players to be locked in, to communicate at a high level. Bryant was one of the guys that really helped that thing, you know, take off and be as dominant at times as it was this season. Love for us to get our hands on Kobe Bryant. He'd be the perfect fit in this secondary. I told you we need 2 starting safeties, not 1. So he'd be one of my, you know, him and Brian Cook are the 2 safeties. Honestly, if you get both of them, and again, you're not spending that kind of money in free agency on the safety position. Both of these guys, I think, are going to command double-digit per year, you know, numbers like 12, 13, $14 million a year, I think, especially with the cap going up. I think you're going to see these 2 guys get, you know, a nice piece of change for what they've done in their young NFL careers. Both of them 26 years old. Brian Cook would be more of the strong safety variety, but you can ask him to do so many different things, and he plays the position so physically. I just love Brian Cook. You gave me either one of these 2 guys, and I would be a happy man at the safety position. Cam Curl, we talked about him already. Former homegrown product, allowed to leave, really went to LA and played well. I wouldn't mind having him back, but feel like you could just, I always have felt you could do better than Cam Curl, but I also felt like he would have been a really good player in what they wanted from their safeties here. But now it's a different scheme. Curl would be perfect to play that strong safety, you know, role here if they, you know, so desired. But again, I don't see Cam Curl being here. They had a shot at him when he was here. They could have just kept him here, and they decided to let him walk. I don't see them doubling back and, you know, admitting they made a mistake. So I don't think that's what they're going to do. A couple of other one position that I left off, cornerback. Lante Taylor is a guy that is rangy, physical, inconsistent, can play in the slot though, does a lot of good things, but he also is a guy, I already talked about this with you guys before, doesn't attack the football, can be a little handsy down the field, doesn't always know where the ball is. Not the biggest Alante Taylor fan. However, Josh Jobe is a guy that has won me over. I was not a Josh Jobe fan when he was in Philadelphia. Used to make fun of him. He went to Seattle to the school of Mike Macdonald, and he's graduated, and he is a changed man, right? And now looking at him, feel like he's going to be able to cash in this offseason and get some good money. And maybe it's to stay in Seattle. Maybe it's to go elsewhere. Another guy that played in that Seattle zone-based scheme that is, I don't want to say akin to what we do, but it's not that far off in terms of the responsibility of the corner in that defense and what we're going to ask our corners to do. And I think he did a really good job in Seattle. So a guy that I'm interested in. I don't necessarily love the age. He'll be 28, you know, going into next season, but still the prime of his career. You know, you get 3 years out of him, you should be good, right? But, you know, this is the guy that I want. Tariq Woolen. You can't teach 6'4", long arms, 4'2", you know, 40 speed. Yeah, he's got some shit with him. Yeah, he can be, you know, a little bit rough around the edges from, you know, a play standpoint. It's not always consistent. Just, yeah, give me Tariq Woolen. I heard all of that. That's cool, fine and dandy. Yeah, just give me Tariq Woolen, straight up. We'll figure out the rest later. Another guy that we're going to see in the Super Bowl, and like I said already, Super Bowl changes lives. He goes out, he has a pick, plays excellent football. His stock might go through the roof too. So you just never know, what will happen. But again, these are some of the names that make a ton of sense. And you just got to ask yourself, will the Commanders be willing to spend on any of these guys that are going to cost you some money this offseason? There's other names, as I mentioned, Jalen Thompson, for instance, at the safety position. He'd be the perfect strong safety in this defense. Rangy, tackles, can blitz, attacks the football, really smart guy. I think he's 27, 28 years old, so still right in that range that makes sense. There's so many guys that I left off this list because they're not necessarily top defensive free agents, but they would make a ton of sense here. And they won't cost you as much, but they're not going to be cheap either. So, there's going to be more conversation. Obviously, I'll have a more in-depth conversation about offensive and defensive free agents, guys that fit here, guys that may not fit here, but are names that you have to consider, etc. Especially for the defense that we think we're going to be implementing. Those more comprehensive lists are definitely on the horizon. So stay tuned to the Louie T Network because we've got so much to talk about now that we have the Super Bowl ahead of us. The last game, we put that behind us after this Sunday, and we turn our attention straight to free agency. And I'm going to kind of try to juggle both free agency and the draft, really start to get my feet wet with the draft because there's a quick turnaround and then we're just submersing ourselves in free agency. So all of the head coaching vacancies basically have been filled, with the Raiders basically announcing that, and we already knew that Clint Kubiak was getting that job. So with them doing that, pretty much slammed the door shut on the coaching. It was a long process with so many job openings, but now you're just seeing teams kind of shuffling the deck as to who's going to be their offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, this, that, the third. You're seeing teams kind of shuffle the deck. Denver, promoting Davis Webb from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator, that sort of thing. So we're getting down to the final stages of the coaching carousel, and then it's just full bore free agency. And then from there, it's the quickest transition over from free agency straight to draft. And then it's draft for 2 months straight. And then boom, after that, your offseason is basically complete. And at that point, you know what you got. Now, what are you going to do? And so it's going to be this whirlwind like it always is. And so we got to hunker down, and I'm getting ready for all of that. So with that said, let's get a word from our sponsor, come back on the other side, get to the comment section, and then we will skedaddle.
Sleeper. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN, and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper.
All right, so let's get to the comment section. See what you guys have to say. Big shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. Let's get to your comments, and we will get out of here. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JP writes, Lou, good to see you as always. Likewise, JP, really always a pleasure chopping it up with you. Hope all is well with you and your family, and everything's good in your neck of the woods up in Jersey. He says Devin Lloyd is really interesting. I'd sign him even though he'll be pricey. I'd also want to get Curl back if we can. Devin Lloyd is going to be, I think, very pricey coming off of the season he just turned in. It'll be interesting to see how the league receives the linebacker position. There's some interesting guys available. Someone that wasn't, listed, but again, when we get into our comprehensive discussion, linebacker, you know what? I think I might have left another name off of this list of corners. Yeah, I did. Go back here after this. Lloyd is going to be interesting, but I want to see like how the linebacker market is going to kind of take shape. Is he going to be because normally every year there's a guy that kind of sets the market for the group of free agents that year. After that guy gets his money, then the dominoes kind of fall into place. Like this is going to be the guy that makes the most money. Is Lloyd going to be that guy? Like there's like Leo Chanel in Kansas City. I'm not saying that he's going to be the guy that makes the most money, but he's an interesting player that I think could be the Brian Cashman, right? Like Brian Cashman played well in Houston, and they pay him to go to Minnesota to be their guy, the Mike that wears the green dot. Could Leo Chanel be that guy here in Washington, right? Really good player for Spags in Kansas City, but could take it to another level here in Washington. Who knows? Like there's so many different names. Be interesting. Curl, I just don't see a reunion here. You know what I mean? It feels like, I don't want to say bridges were burned necessarily, but it does feel like they had their shot at Cam Curl. They weren't interested. And I don't think that the interest is either there on either side. I think it's mutual disinterest at this point with Cam Curl. I could be wrong. I could be absolutely far off base with Cam Curl and his interest in coming back to Washington. If they show him the money, I'm pretty sure he'd be interested in coming back. But I just don't see that being the case. Let me pull up this name real quick, these two names real quick. These were two more corners that felt like could be guys that make some good money on the free agent market. Nahshon Wright, breakout year. Nobody saw it coming. Again, I talked about can't teach size. This is a 6'3", 6'4" corner here with tremendous length and, tacking the football, 5 interceptions this year. Look, he wasn't perfect. There were coverage breakdowns and mishaps, and he got beat at times. But, to be able to take it away 5 times, to have that type of, frame at the cornerback position, very intriguing, very intriguing. And they play a lot of zone in Chicago. We're going to play a lot of zone, I think, here in Washington. So if he can take it away, that's a commodity that they're going to be looking for more likely than not. And then Jalen Watson, he's a much different corner. He played a ton of man for Spags, and we know how much Spags leans on his corners. He puts those boys on an island. He's blitzing. And so you got to be able to stand up by yourself a lot of times with no help. And Watson has been able to do that for each of the last 2 years in Steve Spagnuolo's blitz-heavy man coverage defensive unit. And so Watson's an interesting guy. I think he's going to be a player that a lot of teams covet because he can play man in a league where, it's hard to find good man cover corners. Watson has shown the ability to be able to do that. So be interesting to see if he is another guy that moves the needle in free agency or not. So I did want to throw that name out there because my mind kind of, like, their names when we started talking about linebackers, and I thought about Leo Chanel, I started thinking about Jalen Watson. I'm like, did I talk about him? I don't remember me talking about him, and I had not. So, John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, double up, thank you for doubling up. Who writes, would Adam Peters draft Jeremiah Love at 7? No, I don't think so. I don't know that for sure. But if I were a betting man, I would tell you absolutely not. Absolutely not. He wouldn't draft him at 7. I don't think he values the running back position that highly to where he would draft. Now, Jeremiah Love is different. He's a lot like Jahmyr Gibbs, and that kind of guy you should consider spending a top 10 pick on. However, that is a luxury that we just simply do not have right now. You can get by, and there are free agent running backs that you can sign one, bring back some of the guys you already have on the roster, whatever you choose to do. You can get by at running back and spend your resources on something else. We are so bad defensively that I think a lot of their attention this offseason is going to be surrounding, Durante Jones with as much defensive talent as you can muster to try to get this defense, because they realize they've got to help Jaden. They talked about this offseason. They have got to help Jaden. They have got to surround him with more talent. And it's not just on offense. To make his life easier, how about generating some takeaways? How about getting some stops defensively? How about not making Jaden feel like he's got to go out there and be perfect every week and score 30 plus in order to win? You can hold opponents down to 17 points. Think about how dynamic this team could be. And so while our offense could be lethal with a guy like Love at 7, you might still have some of the same defensive issues if you don't do enough to quell those concerns. Again, it's hard to say which is the best approach, because if you go back to 2024, the defense was just as bad. The offense was just that good. And so we were able to protect the offense. That is not a sustainable model, but it is one that you can utilize for a season. We saw that. And if you start trying to turn the defense around, but you also say we're going to push this offense to its limits and get as much talent on that side while we're continuing to slowly build up the defense, you might be able to get by with that. But I think most of us would much rather them spend as many resources as necessary on defense. Obviously, still get Jaden more weapons. That is a non-negotiable. But Love at 7 feels like a luxury we simply do not have right now. I would love it, pun intended, but I don't see that happening. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Once again, my guy JP writes, Lou, what if AP has a deal up his sleeve that we don't know about? A Max Crosby trade, maybe. JP, you love trades, bro. But I don't know how many times I have to say this to you. I don't know if I have to say it in a different language, JP, but there's no trade coming. We don't have any capital, bro. If anything, we would want to trade away some stuff to get us more draft capital. We're not like Adam Peters, I assure you, doesn't want another 6-player draft. You trade for a Max Crosby when you think you're getting close or you're a few pieces away here or there. That's not where we are. We are still trying to build this roster. And the way you build a roster is through the draft. You can't keep giving away draft picks. So no, there is no trade up his sleeve this year. He was aggressive last year because we were this close. And whether you guys want to admit it or not, we were this close. That's why you trade for a Laramie Tunsil. That's why you trade for a Marshawn Lattimore, because in season, the weakest position of our team was corner. So he traded for Marshawn Lattimore. And that wasn't just a trade for that season in 2024. It was also a trade for the future because Lattimore was still under contract for 2 more seasons, right? So if he got back to that level of play that they thought he could be at, well, you got him under contract and it's a reasonable deal. And so it would have been a great contract for the Commanders. It didn't work out because he never got back to that level, but that's the risk the risk you take. With Laremy Tunsil, they said we could do so much better at left tackle. Here's an opportunity to get one of the premier left tackles in the league, still, prime of his career. Let's do it. So they did it. But make no mistake, he said he would do it again, and I don't blame him. A second and a fourth round pick for a guy that played at a Pro Bowl, all-pro level. Hell yeah, sign me up. But trust me, he'd much rather keep his draft picks moving forward. So there's no Max Crosby trade coming and take it a step further. Max Crosby is one of the things that the Raiders are selling as a way to get a guy like Clint Kubiak to come to Vegas. Obviously, having the number one pick in the most cap space of any team in the league helps a ton, right? Feels a lot like how we were able to sell our job 2 years ago. Number 2 pick, almost the most money of anybody in cap space, 9 draft picks, 6 of which in the top 100. There was a lot here that could entice someone to come. Max Crosby is a part of what entices someone to go to Vegas. You got Max Crosby, you got Brock Bowers, you got Ashton Genty, you got the number 1 pick, so presumably Fernando Mendoza. You've got all this money you can spend to build around Mendoza and that defense. That's the selling point in Vegas. They're not moving on from Max Crosby in particular, but you were just using him as an example. I don't think there's a big trade anywhere for this team. If anything, we would be looking to move off of some of our players, if at all possible, not the other way around. I don't see them looking to acquire any player via trade because they're not looking to give away any draft capital. We just simply don't have any to give away. People are saying he's gone from Vegas this offseason. He was upset about them sitting him out at the end of the season. He could be as mad as he wants. He doesn't control anything. This isn't the NBA. They'll smooth things over with him. He doesn't want to leave. He might be frustrated, but he's not going anywhere. I'll be shocked. Now, I've said that before, and then we've seen players get traded before in the past. So, again, it's lying season. Believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man, Louie T. But I don't think Max Crosby's going anywhere. I'll just tell you that right now. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, video channel writes, Lou, video channel. How many of our current players on offense and defense are locks to start week 1 in 2026? I think we did this already. Lock is a strong word because we have no idea with new coordinators what their scheme entails and what that means for how they're going to move around pieces. But we can go through it real quick. Right? Like we follow this team very closely. It's not rocket science. So let's start on the offensive side because I think that's the easiest of the 2 sides to do. Offensive line, 4 out of the 5 guys are under contract, with the only guy not being Chris Paul. I don't see why they wouldn't bring him back. Now, the scheme that they could be going to, which we feel like with the moves that they've made, including promoting Darnell Stapleton to offensive line coach, where he's more of a zone run blocking scheme, offensive line coach. Chris Paul, not necessarily a great fit for that. Coleman would be. So either way, it feels like the starter is already here, whether it's Coleman already on, the team being reinserted into the left guard position, or they re-sign Chris Paul. But the offensive line feels like it's already intact with Tunsil, Coleman / Paul, Biotish, Cosme, and then Josh Connolly Jr. So you got 5 starters on the offensive line. Obviously, you got Jaden Daniels at quarterback, so that's 6. I'm not sure that our starting tight end resides here, but you never know. They're not going to do a bunch to the tight end position. If they do, they'll add one tight end to take the place of Zach Ertz. That's all it feels like they're going to do, whether that's in the draft or that's in free agency, remains to be seen. They could hit us with no, we drafted Ben Sinnott in the second round because we believe he's a starting tight end in this league, and now here's his opportunity. And so Ben Sinnott could easily be your starting tight end in 2026. I'm hoping that is not the case. Hope they go out and upgrade this position. There are some really interesting tight ends that will be available. Let's see if they'll do that. I'm going to assume that the starting tight end is not on the roster right now. So we'll say 6 right now. Running back, same thing. I don't think the starting running back is on the team right now, but it could easily be on the team right now. But I don't think that's the case. So we'll leave that open as well. Receiver, you got Terry McLaurin, obviously a starter. That's it, right? Like, I don't think we know who the slot receiver is. We don't know who the other receiver opposite of Terry is because Debo isn't under contract. We don't know if he's going to be back or not. So I think that is all you can go with on the offensive side. Out of the 11 possible starters, 7 are already here, right? Wide receiver, Terry McLaurin, quarterback, Jaden Daniels, and all 5 of your starting offensive linemen. That's it on the offensive side. Again, it can be more, right? It can be more. But as of right now, that's what it feels like. I mean, and, Traylon Burks could be your starter out wide opposite of Terry next year, and they just go get a slot receiver. Who knows, right? But as of right now, we're just going to assume that those are the 7 that we feel pretty confident as locks. You use the word locks. Those are locks. Defensively, this is where things get really dicey because we got a completely different scheme. Don't know what his vision for this defense quite is. Don't know if any of the parts that are currently here necessarily fit what he wants to do outside of Javon Kinlaw and Daron Payne. We don't even know if Daron Payne is going to be here. It feels like he's going to be here after months of speculation of him not being here. Feels like he is going to be here. We'll see what happens with him. But assuming that he is here, you got Daron Payne and Javon Kinlaw. I think that other defensive end spot is open right now. What's the status of Dorrance Armstrong? If he's healthy, he's a starter. If he's not, you got to look elsewhere for that. Jordan McGee, we got to assume he's a starter. But then again, can we safely assume that he is your starting middle linebacker this year? Don't know. I think that's a big question mark. We're talking about Sonny Styles for a reason. So, again, hard to really say. I don't want to – you said locks. Daron Payne, Javon Kinlaw on the D-line. I don't think you have any locks at linebacker. You have one lock at corner, probably 2. I would say Mikey Samerstill is going to be on the field in some capacity at corner, whether it's nickel or outright as a boundary. And then Trey Amos is going to be out there for sure. So that's 4 guys. I don't think you have a starting safety on this team. But again, Will Harris could easily be starting for us next year. We'll see. But for me right now, defensively, you got 2 defensive linemen. You got no linebackers. Or excuse me, Frankie Louvu is going to start. My bad. Frankie Louvu is going to start next year at linebacker, outside linebacker. So that's 5. 2 on the defensive line, Frankie Louvu at linebacker, 2 corners. That's it. I don't think you can pencil anybody else in at this point. We've already gone through this. When I talked about the 3-4, I could pull it up again, but we've already kind of gone through this already as to what pieces are already here that, we think could potentially be holdovers on this team for the Commanders next year defensively. But this is what I told you, and it's the same 5 guys, basically 6. I had McGee in here, but he's not a lock, right? Same as still Amos, Louvu, Kinlaw, and Payne, if Payne is here, assuming Payne is here, are locks. McGee is not a lock to start next season, although I think he's going to be in the mix and be a part of this defense. Samer still is going to be on the field in some capacity, whether it's nickel or boundary. He's going to be on the field. Amos is absolutely going to be on the field. Kinlaw and Payne are going to be on the field, assuming Payne is here, and Louvu's definitely going to be on the field. Outside of that, those five, McGee feels like a wild card, feels like a guy that's going to be on the field, but again, can't say that he is necessarily a lock at this point. So 5 on the defensive side, 7 on the offensive side. James LaRue, been a member for a month. Really, truly do appreciate you. Writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, James? You peeped my comment on last stream? Nope. Doesn't ring a bell. You'd have to give me a refresher. I don't know if you're talking after the stream in the comment section, if you're talking during the stream. Hard for me to know. The Commandalorian, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Commandalorian writes, give cornerback Reek Woolen and linebacker Quay Walker and tight end Likely. So those are all great targets. I would be a happy man if we acquired all 3 of those. Highly unlikely. You see what I just did there? To get those 3 guys. Very, very unlikely. But shouldn't stop us as fans from wanting those things to transpire. But I'm a realist when it comes to these sort of things. So I don't allow my brain to get overwhelmed with crazy optimism on things that I don't think are going to happen. So there's a chance you come away with one of these 3. Not out of the realm of possibility that you get 2 out of the 3. There's no way in hell. Very, very unlikely. Not impossible. Very, very unlikely that you come away with all 3. The Commandalorian. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, dream scenario, sign wide receiver Pierce, tight end Pitts, cornerback Reek Woolen. Yes, that would be outstanding. Again, I don't think we're going to spend the money that it takes to get a receiver like Pierce. He would be perfect for us because I think he kills 2 birds with 1 stone. We'd be the perfect complementary number 2 to Terry. Offers you some size, something else that we really don't have. And you still got Trey Burke, so that would be good. But the thing that we really lack, the box that he really would check, is speed. We just don't have enough guys that can run opposite of Terry McLaurin. Even if you were to bring back Debo can't run. We need a guy that can stretch the field vertically. We missed De'Ami Brown in that regard. Pierce would give you that ability, and a guy that you could just throw it up to. Jaden could just say, hey, Alec is down there somewhere. I'm going to just give him a shot, and he'll come down with the football. So it's a lot of people that are going to be in the market for Alec Pierce. I think his price, I think he's going to come away with the biggest contract on the offensive side of football in free agency. And I don't see us getting into that fray. I think he's a Raider, to be honest with you. They've got the money. They've got the need. I think he's a Raider, but we'll see. Pitts is going to be interesting. I don't think we're interested in Pitts. That's just me personally, kind of reading some of the tea leaves, but I hope I'm wrong. And then Reek Woolen is going to be interesting because I do think we're in the market for a corner, but will it be him? Don't know. Do not know. James LaRue, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy James writes, Commanders report by Chat Sports. Oh, okay, yeah, I did see that where you had the comment where they did a mock draft and they traded back in their mock draft. Yeah, he said, I thought it would pique your interest with the scenario he presented. Yeah, you had said something. I haven't checked it out though. But we talked about a trade back scenario here on this channel. But again, I'm not knee deep in the trade stuff or the draft stuff rather yet. It just, I think I had brought it up very briefly when we looked at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. Obviously, he had us taking Sonny Styles at 7, comped him to Fred Warner, then had the Saints at 8 taking Jeremiah Love, and I think the Chiefs taking the Miami edge, Ruben Bain, at 9. Matter of fact, it's right here. Oh no, it stopped at 8. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Bain at 9. And my the first thing that jumped into my mind was, if the Saints want Love at 8 and the Chiefs, who have been rumored to want to upgrade the running back position, obviously they don't have, I mean, if you've got Kareem Hunt doing the heavy lifting for you at the running back, you got an issue there, bro. And I see the Chiefs a lot like the Lions, like they're in a position where they can draft a running back. They have that luxury to be able to do that. Do you know what that would do for the Chiefs offense to have a dynamic weapon? Now, I know they drafted the kid out of Kansas last year. Not Kansas, not Neil. He got drafted by the Saints. They drafted the kid out of damn, I can't think about where he came from. But he was a former wide receiver, turned running back. And he started to really play well for the Chiefs towards the end of the year. They started to really trust him a little bit more. But he ain't Jeremiah Love. Now, will the Chiefs feel like they have to have Jeremiah Love? Probably not. Probably not. But they've shown that they'll draft a first-round running back. They drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round some years ago. So they've shown that they'll do it at 9. I don't know about that. But in this mock draft, Jeremiah Love was taken at 8, and I'm like, hey, if you want him, come up to 7, come and get him. We move back to 9, and everybody wins, right? So that was like one of the scenarios I brought up. But no, I haven't checked out the chat sports, but I did see your comment. I did see that. Now that you brought that up, I did see it. Anyway, I digress. So that is basically all she wrote for tonight's show. I am going to do a comprehensive list of the free agents. So, we're going to get really deep into the free agency bag here in a bit. Still waiting on this press conference. It's got to be coming sooner rather than later. We'll keep our eyes peeled for any other moves. Remember, they still have moves to be made. And if John Keim is correct that they want to wait until they have been fully staffed, then we need to be keeping our eyes peeled to see what they do with this pass rush specialist, with this new defensive assistant defensive line coach, this new player development coach, etc. We got a bunch of openings here in Washington now with this move. And I don't know if you guys caught wind of this. I led with this kind of at the beginning of the show, but the Denver Broncos chose Davis Webb, their quarterbacks coach, for their offensive coordinator. So that means Brian Johnson isn't going anywhere. Didn't think he was going to get that job, much like I didn't think Anthony Lynn would get the job in Cleveland as the head coach. So both are back here in Washington. So you pretty much have those voids on the defensive side that you have to fill now, and the player development coach. So we keep our eyes peeled on what they decide to do there, and maybe that's the holdup as to why we haven't gotten a press conference or haven't even heard about when a press conference might take place. So when I find out something, if I do find out something early, I will let you guys know. But as of right now, nothing on the press conference front. So in any event, you know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Enjoy the rest of your evening. and I will get at you guys later. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys take care. God bless. Good night.